I'm Bob Grove, and we're talking to people from EF21, Kansas City's 2021 Earth Festival, running April 17th and 18th. Earth Day began in 1969 when U.S. Senator Gaylord Nelson proposed the idea of holding a nationwide environmental, quote, teach-in. A year later, on April 22nd, more than 20 million people took to the streets, and this first Earth Day still remains the largest single-day protest in human history. Earth Day events are now celebrated in 141 countries around the world, and over 100 million people observed last year's 50th anniversary of Earth Day. So from the beginning, Earth Day has been envisioned as a teach-in, an environmental educational event, something to help us learn about the planet and to help us take action to protect it. EF21 continues this educational tradition with a climate university, and that's 2 days of free online action-oriented climate classes. David, you're with Kansas City Drawdown Society. You're basically opening the Climate University on Saturday at 1 p.m. and your class is called Climate Solutions Supercharged. Tell us more about that.
Yes, and I really wanted a title that would let people know that um, after a few years of people really working on climate solutions rather than just worrying about how bad it's going to be, how fast, that people have worked out ways to really get people involved and not just learning about the solutions, but actually going into their stretch zone and acting on it. And so have learned a lot over the last few years of how to really get that supercharged. So that's going to be what my presentation is going to give, is some of the things that we've learned that make it just really supercharged. Some of the projects that came out of these techniques are things like, most people know me as the worm master. We were able to get over 100 kitchen worm compost bins into people's kitchens. And I have one of those people who's going to be traveling to Italy for an environmental event and wanted to make sure that I would babysit her colony of worms. So,
It's kind of like having pets.
and this was actually 2 grants that that got awarded, and there also been fundraisers raising money for educating girls and for forest restoration. There was a workshop put together that brought over 100 city municipal people that were either mayors or on the councils of some of the area's municipalities, and did a whole day workshop on resilience in the face of the climate crisis. Another group in Maryland got several different places that were working on planting native trees. And their goal is to have 2021 new native plantings in Maryland in the year 2021. And they're on track. So they're just a lot of these success stories of how people have just, knocked it out of the park. And one of the things that I'll talk about in my presentation is the whole idea of action plans, where people actually put down in writing what they plan to do and when they're going to do it by, and what the steps are and what the things they're going to need to get as resources and who they're going to need to talk to. And the other is building a community or a team to support them. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the action circles that have just been so instrumental in getting real action on climate solutions. And
These action circles come out of Drawdown? I mean, is that a Drawdown
well,
thing?
these are coming out of several places, actually. The Pachamama Alliance, which did most of the education about Project Drawdown and the most impactful climate solutions. And also out of some of their courses, and also with Will Grant, who's been doing community activism and teaching people how to really get successful with getting things done. So these are from my work on a lot of the pilot programs on, well, we need to educate people, but we also need to get them into action. And how do we do that?
I think that's really great. The idea of, I mean, we can learn so many things, but if we don't act on it, what's the point? So, you know,
Exactly.
giving people that motivation of taking that first step is really good. So thank you, David. And I believe your event is Saturday, 1 p.m. Well, I just said that. You opened the entire climate
Yep.
university. So there you go. Looking forward to that. Stephen, you're with Citizens Climate Lobby, Kansas City, and your event is titled Federal Carbon Pricing Legislation. I believe you're Sunday at 1 p.m. Tell us about your event.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Bob, thanks for inviting me to participate in this. It's quite an honor. Citizens Climate Lobby is a nationwide, actually international group of volunteers working for climate legislation at the federal level here in the United States. And, you know, we're also the group that passed out all the vote climate for the children yard signs in the last election cycle. Hopefully you saw those.
I saw those everywhere. I did. Yeah.
Right. Well, we passed out over 1,000 of them. And we also, you know, before COVID used to pass out the vote climate for the children's stickers at a lot of events, such as this, like the Earth Day 2 years ago. So that's kind of who we are. We're focused, as I said, on federal legislation, and it's been a pretty exciting week. Just 5 days ago, the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act was introduced into the House of Representatives, and this is a bill that we support. It basically is a carbon pricing bill, which puts a price on carbon and returns all the money to ordinary families. So the whole idea of carbon pricing is to incentivize people to lower their carbon footprints and to penalize people who don't lower their carbon footprints. It's a pretty exciting bill. We think we can, it will enable us to reach our Paris Climate Agreement goals of 100% net zero by 2050. And it isn't like it's all backloaded. We believe it will get a 30% reduction within just the first 5 years. So it's very exciting. This summer, President Biden is going to announce his climate package, the legislation that he's going to put before the Congress. This is the first time in many years that we have a possibility of actually passing something meaningful at the federal level. And so it's a very exciting time for us. We're not just going to talk about the bill that we're favor, but we're going to talk about some of the other bills too, so you can see, you know, what else is going on. And, you know, it's like a Chinese restaurant, you know, one from column A, one from column B, and one from column C. So we're very excited, and I look forward to the presentation.
So you're going to tell us about the bills and carbon pricing and explain.
Yeah,
is there an action component?
Excuse me?
Is there an action component? I mean, once you've told us, how will you show people how to get engaged with that?
We certainly will. We're actually in the middle of a postcard campaign that started just over the weekend, over Easter weekend, where we're sending postcards to members of Congress and to the White House, urging them to get on board with carbon pricing legislation. And I can tell you how to send a postcard if you want to. We've made downloadable postcards that you can just print in your printer and send off to the president's climate advisor, the White House National Climate Advisor, and ask her, Miss Gina McCarthy, if she'll actually take the message to President Biden as well. But it's nice to have a White House office specifically designed to inform the president about upcoming legislation and how to put together a climate package for this country and really the world. Because when we start doing carbon pricing in the United States, join our friends in Europe, join our friends in Canada, in a carbon pricing scheme, we can really force the rest of the world to get on board with carbon pricing, or they will pay a price in the global marketplace. So we're very excited. It looks, after 4 years, it looks at long last like we're getting a lot of momentum to do something very serious and important here.
Thanks, Steve. That sounds really good. And again, your class is on Sunday, the 18th at 1 p.m.
Right, and I'll be doing it with Jennifer Brown, who is in CCL on the Kansas side of the border. We got CCL on the Missouri side, we got CCL on the Kansas side, so we'll be doing it together.
Okay, that's great. Rianon, you're doing a seminar or class on microplastics in the environment. That's such a topical issue. I'm hearing so much about microplastics these days. You're with the KU Aquatic Ecology Lab. So is this something you're developing there?
Hey, so my name is Rienon. I'm with KU Aquatics Ecology Lab. So for the past 2 years, I have been doing research on microplastics. That's kind of been my independent project within the lab, because I found it really fascinating. And, before doing my own research on microplastics and things like, the plastics that you hear that are getting into the environment, everybody's talking about like water bottles and like really big plastics and how they, stay in our systems, like our ecosystems. But what hadn't been talked about as much, especially going through school and stuff, were microplastics and how damaging and harmful they can be on the environment, from things like, entering the ecosystems through like the simple act of washing your clothes. And we see those in microfibers versus like the degradation of bigger plastic items or just raw materials getting into our ecosystems. So I'm planning to host a little talk on microplastics and how they affect our environment. Hopefully it's going to be engaging, try to make it fun, but I'm hoping to expand on like what exactly microplastics are, how they're impacting our environment. I specifically do research on microplastics and how they affect freshwater organisms. So I'm looking at 2 types of organisms, Daphnia magna and a ghost shrimp. And I'm looking to see if these microplastics trophically transfer from the zooplankton to the ghost shrimp when the shrimp eat the plankton, and like kind of like speculating like what could that mean, if we're seeing trophic transfer in aquatic food webs, like what could that mean for us? So I'm more in
You're
the
looking at how plastics goes through the food cycle and gets in, maybe even us getting into eating those and such. That's a great topic. We're going to take a quick break and then come right back. I'm Bob Grove, and we're talking about the Kansas City Earth Festival, EF21, running April 17th and 18th. When we return, we're going to continue talking about this fascinating subject of microplastics.